Okay, well, we're gonna continue after this break, and the next presentation is a talk with two keynote speakers coming from France, the University of Tours, and they are going to talk about public health and also the use of gamification and CSGS in this context. So thank you so much, Emmanuel, Jean-Denis, Rusch, Aubry, for being there today. So please, just if you want to use this or well.
Thank you very much, Stéphane. So I am Emmanuel Rusch, and I am a public health physician, and I am the director of research unit, education, ethics and health. It's a research unit of the University of Tours, and it's a team which is constituted by 27 full members and 22 PhD students. We have two areas of application: educational and training pathways, health or care or clinical pathway also. And the team's work is based in particular on an examination of the conditions for acting together, taking care, and decision making. The research activity of our team, research team, is based on interdisciplinarity from education to health via philosophy and also specialists in ethics. Our research focuses in particular on therapeutic patient education. So our subject today is about therapeutic patient education. You know that chronic diseases are a key challenge for our healthcare systems in developed countries, and therapeutic education is an integral part of patient care now in France, but maybe also in Switzerland. And its aim of therapeutic education is to make patients more autonomous, more empowered, and it can facilitate adherence to prescribed treatments, and it can facilitate to improve quality of life. In France, therapeutic patient education takes the form of programs. The aims of these programs are to develop patient self-care skills, and another aim is to develop their ability to adapt to daily life. These programs comprise 4 stages. First, carrying out an educational diagnosis. After, it's necessary to define learning priorities, and after, it's necessary to implement educational sessions, and finally, to evaluate acquired skills. So, in this context, we explore the place of serious games inside this program of therapeutic patient education. Thank you for La Haute École Arc Ingénierie to give us the opportunity to present our research on this subject. Thank you to Stéphane Gaubron, especially. And thank you to Jean-Denis to present our research about the serious game.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for welcoming us this morning to the GSGS Congress. I apologize in advance for my English accent and for my lack of fluency. The purpose of this study is to question the impact that serious games can have in the therapeutic education programs of adult patients. Or, in other words, more simply, can we play with our health? The first part of this research consisted in carrying out a bibliographic search through documentary search engines such as PubMed or Cairn, for example. This is why we turn to a participatory science approach around an adventure of conducting a series of 5 webinars in the middle of the COVID period in 2021 on the themes we wanted to explore, and Stéphane Gombron was one of our speakers in the webinars. In the first time, with the element collected first of all allowed us to define a first theme around e-health, e-TPE, and e-patient. Since 2019, France has experienced an acceleration in digital revolution in health, supported by the Ministry and the High Authority of Health, among others. Throughout the COVID period, practices in terms of therapeutic patients education have been found by the force of digitalized things, generating this new approach that is e-TPE. Thanks to one of the webinars, we were able to focus more particularly on an approach of Dr. Ferguson, who dealt in the 80s with the paradigm of the e-patient, namely a user who is not only connected because of a digital environment, but who is also above all empowered, educated, engaged, equipped, and expert. Our research work has also led us to question the principle of digital literacy, which deals with patients' ability to identify and understand medical and health information through digital tools. We are talking here about literacy, health literacy, and digital health literacy. The ability to understand and mobilize medical information in order to better manage one's health on a daily basis. Then, as caregivers that we are, it was essential that we explore the specificities of what a serious game is. It was important for us to understand and define what a serious game is, and we were able, thanks to the speakers during webinars like Stéphane or Frédéric Kunzmann, whom you have already heard in another congress, to better understand the issues of gameplay and also game design influencing immersion and the dimension of the pleasure of playing, developed by the theory of the fun, the flow. We have also approached the principle of gamification, which will make it possible to do an educational activity fun without necessarily resorting to the use of a game. And you've got a citation of Alvarez, a French author who studied the gamification computer, and he says that serious game is a computer application whose objective is to combine both serious aspects with playful sprints from the video game. Such an association is therefore intended to move away from simple entertainment. And it does another application about gamification, introducing a game, digital or not, utilitarian or not, into a training is it itself a gamification process. It is the process of associating game or game elements in a context that lacks them. A third theme that bibliographic research and webinars allowed us to define the question of motivation. That is documented here in a study carried out in France every year by the Union of Video Game Publishers. This point is an element that we have been able to explore extensively in our quantitative and qualitative studies because central to therapeutic patient education, an activity for which we are trained, among other things, in motivational interviewing. Finally, it was important to learn about ethical issues in e-health and the introduction of digital tools in health by addressing, for example, the Pharmacon model developed by Platon, namely that the technological and therefore techno-pedagogical solution will be both the remedy and the poison and to our health education problems. The authors and speakers also invited us to consider the principle of ethics by design developed by Fisher, invited us to ask an ethical reflection from the design phase of a tool. The research question asked the impact that a digital edutainment approach could have on psychosocial skills and on the level of health literacy of patients followed in TPE in compliance with an ethical care approach. The search was conducted according to descriptive studies. The first quantitative objective is to identify the obstacles and levers of edutainment practices in TPE in patients followed in programs in our region Centre-Val de Loire. The results of this study show that educational gains are little or not used are more than 80%, and among the range of playful media, the use of video games was cited by only 4 people out of 56 respondents. However, results caught our attention as to the interest in serious games in terms of their character to allow interaction with other players, other patients, to allow an escape and a decontextualization from the daily life of the disease, as well as an interest around the acquisition of new knowledge and the facilitation to better understand health information. Oh, I did that. The objective of the descriptive qualitative study was to explore during semi-structured interviews the practices as well as the assessment and feedback of the users of a serious game called Drago. This game is intended for allergic patients, half of whom are adults, who must undergo desensitization treatment for 3 years with a risk of non-compliance with treatment continuity. Here are some verbatims that emerged from our interviews, like new practices. The doctor says, I stick the QR code on the prescriptions to download the applications for the patients. New way, I admit that I would not have thought too much to offer it to adults of my patients because of my age. But the doctor say, which is a bit silly because I play. About health literacy, a doctor say, from the doctor's point of view, what is most interesting is the quiz, because in Drago there is a quiz for the patients. It is still a real contribution of knowledge on desensitization and allergy. Another verbatim, about adherence of treatment, a patient says, I wouldn't have the game, I wouldn't be regular at all. About gameplay and design, a patient says, it just changed visuals and just that it allowed to review the machine a little. Strong expectation in the fact of being able to review the questions and see our answer and actually reread what was true or false, to debrief and potentially talk to the family, at work, or with the doctor. Let us now turn to the discussion of our results and the resulting operational perspective. In view of our problem, the elements that will influence the motivation and commitment of the patient player will essentially be a part of the interest of it. Indeed, through the interest of seeking collaboration between patients through the entertainment activity allowed by use of the serious game, it is also the entire personal environment of the patient that is mobilized. This echoes the work of the educational sciences that in 2016 defined the paradigm of the personal learning environment. The use of serious game has also been acclaimed for their interest to influencing the digital health literacy of patients without neglecting the fact of seeking the hybridization of information media, thus allowing to respond to the different profiles of patients followed in TPE, and therefore some without victims of the digital divide. Another conclusion of our research is that the e-patient cannot evolve in the field of e-health, with which the serious games are an integral part, without being accompanied by a new generation of e-caregivers who take on the characteristics developed by Ferguson and highlighted in our two studies, namely. And we have the elements of the paradigm that we make after the research, that the e-caregivers can have to be empowered. The e-caregivers identify their capabilities in the use of digital tools on a daily basis, even outside the health field, without considering themselves outdated. They have to be engaged guides and the guides e-patients in the issue of these digital media by demonstrating the interest that can be brought to them. They have to be equipped, demonstrate a professional but also personal intellectual curiosity relating to digital culture in the current societal context. They have to be enabled, performs agile training, face-to-face, remote, hybrid, and or professional monitoring in the field of e-health. They are educated, develops knowledge, and knowledge allowing him to develop digital health skills that meet the expectation of the e-patients he monitor. Finally, the ethical approach specific to the introduction of digital media in health also remobilizes, as some patients confided to us during interviews, the interest of involving them from the design phase of these techno-pedagogical tools that are serious games. We can then draw inspiration from the Montreal model, which introduces the notion of patient partner and resource that can have an influence on a research and develop new media, and especially as co-designer. In conclusion, we will probably have to question the advance of the artificial intelligence and its impact on the patient experience, as well as the deployment of the metaverse in training, where the serious game will, without a doubt, find its place. And this, some words for conclusion. Palmer Luckey, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and others, there are many, the authors of digital worlds have gamified our lives. Everything is game now. We thank you for your attention and the pleasure of exchanging with you. I thank the Professor Rusch
you very much for this very interesting presentation. And we have time for interactions, questions. So please go. Yeah. One second. Where is the second one? Thank you, Julien. Thanks. And you can help me to...
Can you say something more about the game itself?
It works.
The game Drago, and there is in the game a lot of retro gaming, like Space Invaders, or you have to kill Acarian. Maybe I'm not sure in English. You have it's got the mechanics of the game. You have to have points. You can progress in levels. So it's like a game, and you also have a part of a quiz of allergic, and maybe some things to manage more better our health when we are allergic patients.
Thank you. And maybe what is interesting with this game is that the patient use this game with the family of the patient, with children, with a husband, with so I think it's interesting to consider not only the patient but the use of the game inside the family.
We don't develop the game. It was first 5 doctors specialized in allergic problems who developed it with game designers and game engineers, and they have the financial way by the industry, pharmaceutical industry.
And the conceptor of the game maybe gain a prize.
Yes, Julien Côté, the doctor, has won prize in a congress of allergic congress. There is a study, a paper in 2022 who explains the game and the impact on the patients. But our studies look at the soft skills impact, empowerment, motivation.
And for us, it was difficult to find a serious game with process of gamification. We are serious game for adults, because we have a lot of serious game for children, teenagers, but it's less. It's not very often for adults.
Yes, it's true. There is a question here.
Thank you for the really interesting presentation. You talk about the e-caregivers.
Yes.
Maybe you can get back to the slide.
Yes.
Who are they? Like family members, random people on the internet, and how to make sure
it's
that...
a new paradigm that we make at the end of the research. It's not we are going to have a paper in a review, but it's a paradigm that we make ourselves until it's research. But now there is a law in France. In 2024, it was in the curriculum studies of nurse, doctor, to have lessons about e-health. 28 hours will be
Dedicated
in the cases of a doctor, a physiotherapist, nurse, because it's not in the culture actually in the world of the caregivers.
Great, thank you. Maybe have a second one.
Yeah, we have
Just and if we want that patient use serious game, it's necessary that the health professional integrate some skills to use this serious game and to interact with the patient, about this serious game.
And you say that the game seems to be more efficient when a patient play with his child or someone from the family. So maybe should we stop to develop serious games that are standalone serious games that you must play alone? And maybe specifically in that health field, should it help, or should we stop creating games that you play by yourself? Maybe a tricky question, a bit provocative. Vous avez visiblement montré que ce service game était plus efficace, plus efficient lorsque le patient jouait avec quelqu'un de sa famille. Il y avait plus de feedback, d'interaction. Donc ma question c'est comment on fait évoluer le jeu pour qu'il soit uniquement collaboratif, ce service game, et puis est-ce qu'on continue à développer des service games qui se jouent tout seuls dans le domaine de la santé et de la prévention?
Especially in therapeutic patient education, the family take a very central place. Our point of view, it's necessary to develop serious game with the fact of the presence of the family. Maybe you can play alone, but the treatment for desensitization allergic, it's for 3 years. And when you are alone, you are going to stop it. But with the family, the motivation will be more strong, and serious game, collaborative serious game with the family and with other patients, because there are a community of patients, allergic patients, and maybe the serious game can be played with the community of patients, and they can challenge themselves with the scoring and other things.
Okay, just before the question, I have just one comment on that. You know that collaboration, socialization, etc., in games is one of the what we call mid-term and long-term motivations to continue gaming. So when you start gaming, even if it's serious or not, there is always, you are always very motivated at the beginning, and then motivation draw down. So socialization, working on teams, working on groups, collaboration, exchanging, etc., is one factor of enhancing this motivation, especially for the mid-term and the long-term. So I think the question of stopping developing something for standalone is a little bit too, pushing the things to the extreme, but why not thinking always to introduce this socialization, collaboration aspect, which is very important. Yes. There's other questions, I think.
Thank you very much for your very insightful aspects of your research. It's very interesting. So my question would be from a data protection, data perspective in health. I mean, there is a convergence between data somewhere in the internet, somewhere on-site, somewhere in the family, somewhere in X-ray. Can you see a hurdle there or any risks?
For Drago, we don't make this serious game, so I don't know. I just know that they are the game was has an habilitation by in France like NIL or LGPD in Europe, and they have got the habilitation for the patient to play this game. In the 28 hours that will be necessary to have in our courses of nurse, doctor, physiotherapist, there is lots of lessons about cyber security, data protection. But when we are nurse or doctor, it's very difficult for us because we are not informatician or engineer. And in our hospital, university, we have the specialist of that, of data protection, of cyber security. And when we develop this, this way of education tools in health, we have in our dream team, we have this specialist because we are not the specialists. So we need the jurists in law and the engineers in informatician to help us.
Thank you very much.
It's a great subject. We didn't explore this part, but the minimum is to respect European RGPD, but we need to comfort patient and professional, health professional about this aspect.
I'm sorry, you have a question? No? Okay, yeah, because we make a sign. Okay, more questions? Other questions?
I have one additional question.
Okay, and I have two, but go.
You mentioned AI, artificial intelligence, at the end. I work in artificial intelligence. You can just say a little bit more what you see.
We don't explore this element of AI. We think that it's in the Congress, in the studios, in the papers, it increases the development of AI. But what is the impact in health? Maybe in radiology, to help the doctor to find the disease. But in education of patients, actually, I don't have any elements about the impact of AI. But we are interesting. We are very interesting because in education, patient therapeutic, we compose with the knowledge of the patients, the experienced patients, and the EA compose with the user experience. Maybe we can mix the two paradigms.
Yeah, so I think we can discuss together.
Thank you, Stefan, because you give me a nice transition for my question. My question was, first, are you aware about one big project in the University of Lausanne called Intelligent Patient? And their work is on modeling based on huge amount of data, patients, let's say patients' reactions to treatment, to dialogue, to whatever, and they use this patient in order to insert him in any simulation game or in any serious simulation, not only gamified, in order to have, let's say, natural behavior and natural reactions to treatment, to therapies, etc. I don't know if you know about this project. I think it's since 10 years they are working on it, and they are using artificial intelligence and machine learning, deep learning, in order to guess and to predict this reaction and behavior of the patient.
In France, we have a project, a big project about health data hub, and you put patient records in the same hub. So I think it's an opportunity maybe to better describe clinical pathway of patient, and maybe to identify the main difficulties during the clinical pathway, or to identify some central point of to explore. And maybe it's also an opportunity to precise, to describe better at what moment a serious game will be. It will be interesting to develop the use of a serious game to resolve one difficulty during the clinical pathway. So maybe maybe it's a perspective to hear about this health data hub.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for a last question because we need 5 minutes breaks before the next session.
Thank you so much for your talk. During your talk, you were actually talking a lot of all the things that you are doing at the university in France. But what about the international? Do you have currently some project or some expectation in the future?
At the international level, you mean?
Not at the moment, but maybe with the contact in this kind of project of Congress, maybe we can introduce our laboratory team with others. There are many serious games in France who grow up, but not with the research, without university, and the impact, the interest is not very strong. So maybe we have to collaborate more efficiency, with more efficiency. So it's a pleasure if we can have project at the international.
And this is one of the objectives of this Congress. Okay, so thank you very much for your participation. I'm glad to give you this certification of oral presenter and keynote speaker. Thank you very much. You're welcome always. And again, let's take 5 minutes break, and then let's come back for the next session. Okay, so we start at 50. Is it? Okay, 50. Thank you.